What if we could understand the anatomy and autonomy of an idea? A totality of metrics measuring and encompassing the weight of personhood to build a body of self. Now screaming into the bowels of everything, we find the idiom of innovation, a language in which we all have different dialects. My name is Remy Styrkowicz, and I'm the Director of Radical Intervention at Northwest Youth Services in Bellingham, Washington. At Northwest Youth Services, we serve individuals experiencing houselessness ages 13 to 25 in Whatcom, Skagit, and Island counties. Looking at Whatcom County as both a place and a community we serve, there were 4 questions that came up in figuring out how to better serve and move the work further into a wraparound model. First, how do we restore presence and well-being? Second, what part of the community is underserved? Third, how do we continue anti-racist work? And fourth, what is innovation and how can we partake? I immediately started doing research. My background is in education and project management, really revolving around music and art. I was the head of a music department at a high school in Kansas City for a few years, an assistant teacher at another high school, and I've written, directed, and run arts workshops all over the US. I've been a musician for over 18 years and an active award-winning filmmaker since 2021. I've done work with HBO, Showtime, Microsoft, VH1, and studied with artists like Fall Out Boy, Matchbox 20, Seven Dust, and so on. And all of this work has been rooted in expanding and honoring myself as a Black man, as a Black, queer, trans man. And I've done all this work without a college degree or any institutional training. I've had unofficial mentors, of course, but it's been substantially self-directed. So going back to the 4 questions in building a new service area, I first looked inward. I've been involved in social work and human services in one capacity or another my whole life. Since starting film work in 2021, there's been the question of how can I give back or open a space for others to succeed in this self-directed model. And that's how I landed on creating the Omni Center, which in short is the intersection of art, identity, elevation, and community. It's a visual media studio that is home to radical art-based services for Black, Indigenous, and Brown young people ages 16 to 24. I wrote an accredited 13-week course that uses photography as a catalyst for healing. So when we take a photograph, we cement a very specific moment of time forever. And using photography, we can look at how trauma gets passed down generation to generation and use it in the act of capturing a moment in time to reframe the life we want to live. To set the direction of a dream and thought to a dream we live. 2 findings came up in my research. I don't really like to say problem solution, though I do like the model of it. I like to say observation response. So I observed 2 major issues. 1, there are no engagement services in Bellingham specifically designed for Black, Indigenous, and Brown, BIB as I say for short, young people outside of work, school, or home that foster healing, passion and career advancement, and alternative life-affirming care. I define life-affirming care as anything that is rooted in their passions. And 2, diversion services and programs often target individuals at the later stages in the criminal legal system, meaning folks need to endure the trauma of being detained, or charged, or incarcerated before they receive help or resources. Response 1 is that the Omni Center will increase and extend art-based radical services to BIB young people that build job and life skills for resume building, college applications, and most importantly, cultural affirmation. Response 2 is that the Omni Center is proactive diversion from ever entering the criminal legal system. It's the intentional movement of responding to history, not reacting to it. And at this point, my brain is rapid firing and everything is aligning. I then started to look into the demographics at the 3 main colleges in Bellingham: Western Washington University, Whatcom Community College, and Bellingham Technical College. While having an idea of how much of a racial divide there was going to be, I was still blown away by looking at the numbers, especially now being able to look at them in different ways. This data was collected in 2022. Out of the 15,125 students at Western Washington, 10.3 thousand are white, and only just under 2,000 are black, indigenous, or brown, making it 12.8% BIB. At Whatcom Community, out of the 7.7 thousand, just over 4.5 thousand are white, and 1.2 thousand are BIB, so 15.8% BIB. And BTC has 1.9 thousand students, which just under 1.2 thousand are white, and just under 300 are BIB, 25.2% BIB. All of this data and the process of collecting it leads me to my fourth question. What is innovation and how can we partake? When I think about innovation and the idea of creating something new, I really have to put energy into not focusing on the new aspect, because I know that what I'm ultimately thinking about is coming from my ancestors. It's coming from the community that I reside in and the communities that have wrapped their arms around me. And so the concept of a new idea is actually just the theory that you are in a state of becoming. There's an awakening. It's a soft focus. It's a soft focus into the isness of things. And that is really how innovation has such momentum. It's taking emphasis away from the birth of an event and putting the focus on the isness of the whole picture. And so in creating this idea, a lot of the work went into creating the conditions for this idea to materialize. That research component, internal, external, and situational. The funny thing about innovation is that because we want it to be brand new, usually there's this oddly correct formula that we have to interact with. And in this formula, there are elements of fatigue, and it's this sort of battle fatigue. And there's the hope for new hope, and the desire to learn. And another thing in this oddly correct formula is the realization that the word expertise seems to exist within a specific method, within a specific system that serves a specific group. And also the turning point in which you see how detrimental that can be and the need for supplemental support and pathways. When I first had the idea for the Omni Center and the type of work and structure of knowledge, I don't like to say education because again, it implies a specific method within a specific system, and knowledge is really what we're trying to obtain. And I think in many ways, this is a very privileged idea because of the positionality of where I'm at. And there's two ways positionality comes into this. One being the perceived and synthetic upside of higher socioeconomic class, status, and race, which is now the disadvantage. And two is the underneath, behind the scenes, real privilege of the statement, this is where I come from. Being, this is my expertise because it is me and I am it. And it's really beginning to cement that innovation in an idea is really about the return home. So when I was first having the idea for the Omni Center, it started out as all I knew it was a hub, a center, and a connection point. The original plan was to have it in a house, to have the structure of relation, family, community in this house that is all tethered through art. You look at the ecosystem of Black life, and right in the middle is the home. You're laying out all of those points of connection, and it's like you're sitting at the dinner table, and your mom's telling you a story, or your uncle's telling you a story, or your great-grandma that you never met, like, you know her because of the stories that you heard. That's really the reason I chose photojournalism for the first course in the Omni Center, alongside with the fact that I've always been a very visual person. For me, if we don't have anything visual, we don't have anything at all. And realizing that visual is not just sight. Visual means any capture of energy. We capture a moment in time, and the goal is to get people to visualize it, whether you're physically seeing it or you're hearing the description of this moment in time that helps you build this picture. And so photography and documentary and narrative journalism is really like the perfect middle ground for all of these things, because you're able to capture the energy of someone in so many different ways and forms and really bring focus and energy to exactly where they're at. And realizing that storytelling and art are the wind and wings of people of color. That is where we come from. Our currency is we pass the knowledge, we pass the impact, and we pass the warmth of this way of communication onto others. And it really does have equal and oftentimes greater value. As you know, someone would say, well, you're making a trade, that's money. Like, Americans, more often than not white Americans, their currency is money. It is about the trade of a physical object or a strictly tangible item you're gaining. For us, it's the trade of knowledge and connection of energy, and that's storytelling. It's realizing that we have this long-lasting impact to spread, and that's naturally what we do. We can't not embrace those parts of ourselves. And so I wanted to, knowing that white supremacy is so deeply rooted into everything that we do, and the systems of oppression are working perfectly, that we will, realistically, not be able to break that. We can't reform a system, but we can transform it. And so thinking about the approach of creating enlightened societies to go and create yourself in the way that you would want to see someone else in society, in this, we are creating whole humans that are pursuing a career in something that they want, and something that is in their cultural currency and in the impact of their community. And frankly, it's radical in and of itself because arts aren't really seen as important, and that is rooted in white supremacy because it is the cultural currency of people of color. So we are restoring the impact again, and that's why I think this is a very privileged idea, because our fight isn't just getting this going. We know exactly who we are. We know this is us and we are it. And in that sense, when we say on the path or in tune, this is what we're talking about. And thinking about how I wanted this service and site to operate, and realizing that we all get so tied up in the outcomes, that outcomes in itself and themselves are so much rooted in white supremacy because it demands a goal. It demands that because someone does this, you have to do that, or this has to happen. And it becomes a way bigger conversation of what does it mean to set outcomes? What does it mean to have a goal? And what does it mean to have agency in those outcomes? And going back to the idea of innovation and figuring out what has worked, what's not worked, and for what has worked, figuring out will it work for what we have here, and realizing that when you set outcomes, you immediately look for success in a box. And we know that success is never linear. It's never in a box. It's never in a circle inside of a box. It's in broken up lines. It's broken up dots. It's scribbles. It's different structures that have been burnt down, rebuilt, remodeled, and even buds of ideas, possibilities, and dreams. And so the outcome of the Omni Center is asking whoever comes through nothing but their well-being. And there's this controversy on well-being and how to measure well-being. Like, how do we set metrics and how do we measure mental health and stability? And that's where innovation and why the Omni Center is so important is because we are concrete in the belief that innovation is about the return home. So if we can get people to return to their home within themselves, of things that make them happy, things that are culturally significant for them, and they find security and community and family in that, then we start to see that those are the metrics for well-being. I've always had an issue with the traditional grading system, like A, B, C, D, F. And I think pass or fail is kind of worse because using letter grades, immediately you're just drawing circles inside of a box. And pass or fail, like, the box just gets bigger. So you're actually wasting more energy to find out which box you're in. The upside is that if you're in the pass box, like, on the outside it's awesome, but you don't know like where within that box you're at. You could be at the top where everything is perfect, or you could be at the bottom that's right next to the fail box. But you could still pass, and you're not really receiving that constructive criticism or extra support along the way that helps you into where you want to be. And realizing that A, B, C, D, F, and pass and fail are built on the outcomes of what's suggested of you or required of you. I think removing the barriers of preset outcomes and boxes that they would fall into actually allows them to do better because there's no baseline of what failure is. And failure becomes, it didn't turn out the way that I wanted. That doesn't mean like I can't fix it, or, it removes a lot of the negativity into going and making mistakes. I'm interested in the empowerment of the approach to storytelling outside of the technicals of the camera and the craft. The long-lasting impact, and the one outcome that I will box myself into, is that we build whole humans. Is that we provide holistic healing and energy in order for people to create themselves in the way they would want to see others in community. And it's also in our advantage because we are so small that we have the ability to see the impact quickly, and the ability to even make that impact possible. So the goal is to create whole humans, and then a whole community, to return home, and to love people to life.